Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so we'll put it up. Yeah, looks good.
I was like, I'm glad he has your head.
You, I think they should put here. The size here does not reflect the real size, so. Yeah.
That's fine.
My girlfriend's like,
Understanding.
follow me around,
Oh.
trying to get me to change it.
He's got to call in for, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. In a professional
Yeah.
photographer? Okay.
Oh, my doctor's just right.
Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna
wow.
say, you knew it was happening. Where was it?
Evergreen Farms, which is like
Hmm.
west. There was like
Oh,
all these girls that planted.
he's in Georgia now? Okay, he says he's in Georgia. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was honestly,
Okay.
it was like electric.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with that many people, wow.
Oh, yeah.
I woke up looking like on Monday though. I was like, where do I?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Delaware Public Service Commission meeting of March 6, 2024. We have a reading of the February 21st, 24 meeting minutes. Does any commissioner have any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Chair Winslow, this is Commissioner Conaway. Before we read the minutes, may I please make a presentation?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Malika Davis has served this group for 20 years, and I would like to give her a certificate and a pin if she will come forward. Thank you so very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now turn around and we'll get this.
Let's get the trash can out of the picture, shall we?
Morning years.
Okay. Congratulations, Malika. Thank you, Commissioner Conaway. Once again, any commissioner have any changes or corrections to the meeting minutes? Commissioner Conaway.
Move that we adopt the minutes of the February 21st, 2024 meeting as presented.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The motion carries. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to make comment to the Public Service Commission? I guess 4 or 5 people must be working their way to the microphone by now.
And not the rain.
Okay, I guess we can move on to the consent agenda. Anybody wish to take an item off the consent agenda, which there's only one item on the agenda? If not, Commissioner Drexler.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the sole item that appears today.
Second the motion.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
and I do an aye as well. The consent agenda is approved. We have one item on the regular agenda, and we have in the matter of the application of Delmarva Power and Light Company for an increase in electric base rates. And we're going to hear from Summer Pope on the proposed order number 10396. And then when it's Mr. Jordan's turn, we have also the privilege and honor of being introduced to a new participant in the Public Service Commission activities via Mr. Jordan. Ms. Pope, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Summer Pope on behalf of staff. For your consideration today is proposed order number 10396, denying staff's December 11th, 2023 petition for interlocutory appeal. Staff believes that this proposed order is appropriate and respectfully requests that the Commission accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Ms. Iori?
Good afternoon, Chairman Winslow and Commissioners. While the DPA does not believe that this order fits with what the Commission has done in the past either, we are not going to fight about it any longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Iori. Mr. Jordan?
Good afternoon, Chair Winslow, Commissioners. May it please the Commission, Brian Jordan on behalf of Delmarva Power and Light Company. And Chair Winslow and Commissioner Drexler, I'm joined here today by our newest attorney, Zizhong Shen. Zizhong joined Delmarva about a week ago. I've had a chance today to introduce her to the other commissioners, but she will be representing Delmarva before the Commission and helping me do that. So I look forward to when you get to meet her in person, but she is here now, and I'll let her give you a brief bio.
Good afternoon. My name is Zishang Shen. I just joined last week to Delmarva, learning all things electricity, utilities, etc. Looking forward to appearing before the Commission. I just came over from the Delaware Department of Justice.
Welcome aboard, Ms. Shen.
Thank you.
Chair Winslow, as for order number 10396, Delmarva Power thanks the Commission for its consideration of this order and joins with the public advocate, but also recognizes that it's time to enter this order and move on to the actual hearing. So that said, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Commission has. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of the parties?
Mr. Chairman,
None. Would someone-
I move that we adopt order number 10396 as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded to approve the order. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Correa,
Aye.
Commissioner Conaway,
Aye.
Commissioner Drexler,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The proposed order 10396 is approved and the issue is behind us. Hearing schedule. Number one is in the matter of the adoption of rules and regulations to implement the provisions of 26 Delaware Code Chapter 10 relating to the creation of a competitive market for retail electric supply service. And we have Ms. Pope to explain the application.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Summer Pope on behalf of staff. As background, Reg 49 was reopened by order number 10354 in December 2023 to propose amendments to the rules for certification and regulation of electric suppliers codified at the admin code in section 3001. In summary, the amendments were to remove two sections, community energy facilities and net energy metering, for ease of reference. The proposed amendments were then published in the February 1st Register of Regulations. And in accordance with the APA and by the Commission's own regulations, the Commission holds today's hearing to consider any written comments submitted before February 27th, 2024. However, staff did not receive any written comments to the amendments to Reg 49. Before considering any public comments, if any, on the matter, staff would like to note to the Commission that no decisions will be made today regarding the proposed changes or any comments received to date. Instead, the public comment period will remain open until March 21st, 2024. The commission shall determine whether the regulation should be amended, adopted, or repealed, and shall issue its conclusion at the March 27th meeting. Staff thanks the commission for their consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Ms. Pope? Commissioner Correa?
I move that we. Oh, it's up.
We don't need a motion?
No.
There is no.
In fact, I was going to ask from Mr. Chairman, from Ms. Pope, we don't need to act on this if it's coming back on the 27th of March, right?
Yes, that you'll act on it on March 27th.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, to clarify things in my mind, your comments obviously are with respect to 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, Chairman, I will be repeating myself 2 more times. Each regulation docket unfortunately requires its own hearing to be sufficient for the registrar and the APA.
Okay, then, would you please go on to number 2 then?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Summer Pope on behalf of staff. As background, Reg Docket 65 was opened by order number 10355 in December 2023 to propose a new section of the Administrative Code, the Rules for Regulation of Net Metering, to be codified in the Admin Code at Section 3012. In summary, the proposal was to remove net energy metering from Reg 49 for ease of reference to the new section. The proposed section was published on February 1st in the Registrar of Regulations, or the Register of Regulations, excuse me. In accordance with the APA and by the Commission's own regulations, the Commission holds today's hearing to consider written comments submitted before February 27th, 2024. Staff did not receive any written comments to the amendments to Reg 65. Before considering any public comments, if any, staff would like to note to the Commission that no decisions will be made today regarding the proposed changes or the comments received to date. Instead, the public comment period will remain open until March 21st, 2024. The Commission shall determine whether the regulation should be amended, adopted, or repealed, and shall issue its conclusion at the March 27th hearing. Staff, again, thanks the Commission for their consideration.
Number 3, please.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Summer Pope on behalf of staff. As background, Reg Docket 66 was opened by order number 10356 in December 2023 to propose a new section to the Administrative Code, Rules for and Regulation of Community Energy Facilities, which will be codified in Section 3013 of the Code. In summary, the proposal was to remove the community energy facility language from Reg 49 for ease of reference. The proposed section was published in the February 1st edition of the Register of Regulations. In accordance with the APA and the Commission's own regulations, the Commission holds today's hearing to consider the written comments submitted before February 27th, 2024. Staff did not receive any comments. Staff would like to note to the Commission that no decisions will be made today regarding the proposed changes or any comments received to date. Instead, the public comment period will remain open, and all comments received until March 21st, 2024 will be considered. The Commission shall determine whether the regulation should be adopted, repealed, and shall issue its conclusion at the March 27th, 2024 meeting. Staff thanks the Commission for their consideration.
Ms. Pope, according to the agenda, we're supposed to consider any written comments that were submitted by a certain date, and obviously none were submitted. It sort of feels weird to have a, quote, hearing, end of quote, on essentially, which is a vacuum in the record with respect to comments anyway. And I understand we're not going to take any action on the merits of the substance of the thing until the 27th, but you don't need us to indicate that we've had a hearing, that we had no comments, and it's now, no action whatsoever is needed, period.
Yes, the APA in Title 26 requires the commission to hold a hearing in order to change its regulations. It's just unique that we did not receive any comments in this instance. The commission, I think, can just call the end of hearings for all of these matters and move on, and hopefully in the future we'll garner some public comments and written comments for future regulation changes to make these hearings more exciting.
Okay, as long as we don't have to do anything on the record to acknowledge all that, fine. So we're going to go on to public comment, or did I already do the public comment? I think we already did the public comment. So we've got Mr. Hardigan left, I believe.
Thanks, Chairman Winslow and Commissioners. At this time, I'd like to invite Jake Sneeden, Poulan Shah, and Gil Louise from Delmarva Power up to give the Commission a update on the Indian River Transmission Substation and the Vienna Nelson Transmission Line construction.
Thanks, Matt. And good afternoon, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. I can assure you future regulations will have plenty of comments from Delmarva Power, so you can look forward to entertainment in the future. On everything, across the board. I'm Jake Sneeden. I'm the Senior Manager of Regulatory Strategy for Delmarva Power. I have with me Poulan Shah, who's Exelon's Director of Transmission Strategy and Contracts, and Gil Luz, who's Delmarva Power's Manager of Project Execution. We're here today to provide you an update on our progress with the Vienna Nelson 138 kV rebuild, as we work with all parties to remove the Indian River RMR charge from customers' bills as quickly as possible. And then second, we're going to provide a transmission update, talk a little bit about offshore wind activity in the region, some transmission capacity challenges that we're seeing on the peninsula, and also address some questions that you all had about the Indian River substation. So we do have a presentation, and hopefully we can bring that up on the screen. Thank you. And so we'll start just with a little bit of background on the next slide, talking about the Indian River RMR charge, and just make sure everyone is on the same page. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Oh, one back. Yeah, thank you. So to start, PJM identified 7 different transmission projects that needed to be addressed before the Indian River Power Plant could retire. And these projects ensure the reliable transmission system in the region once that plant does retire. So until these projects are completed, as I think everyone knows, the Indian River Power Plant is operating under a reliability must-run agreement. And the cost of operating the plant, or a portion of the cost of operating that plant, is being passed along to our Delmarva Power Delaware customers at a cost of about $6 per month, which I think we can all agree is very significant and impactful. So importantly, as you can see on the screen here, Delmarva Power has completed 4 of the 7 upgrades already, which is good news. We're making progress in addressing this. And as you can see, we have the Vienna Nelson line continues to be the longest duration project that's needed to be done to address this charge. And so that's really what we're going to focus on today with our update. And let me just start by saying, we understand the financial impacts that this charge is having on our Delaware customers, and it is a focus from our CEO down on accelerating the Vienna Nelson project. I think as everyone knows, in 2022, when we first had this project, we put an in-service date out there of December 2026. As we went through the planning and design phase, we were able to accelerate that to December 2025. And I am very pleased to be here today to tell you that we have accelerated that timeframe again to May of 2025. And that is really thanks to 2 factors. One, we were able to do a very efficient approval process for the CPCN in Maryland that was required to build this project. And then 2, we've made really good progress in ordering the long lead materials that take a lot of time to get there that are necessary to actually make the upgrades. And so this is I think a big win for our customers, and we're excited to be able to accelerate it. As I said before, we're really focused on affordability, and so what this translates to for our customers is approximately $65 million in savings when you look at the December 2026 in-service date to a May 2025 in-service date. And we are going to continue to look for opportunities to accelerate this project. May 2025 is what we can commit to today. But if there are additional opportunities, we will find them, and we will continue to keep you updated on our progress. I'm going to turn it over now to Gil, whose team really oversees the execution of this project, and he's going to talk a little bit about, just a refresher on what the project includes, and then really go through in more detail that execution timeline to get to May 2025. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Jake. So good afternoon, Chairman Winslow, Commissioners.
Excuse me a second, sorry for interrupting. Pull the mic directly up, please, so the folks on the phone will hear you. Just get really close, thanks.
All right, is that better? Closer the better. Okay, closer the better.
That's not really better.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, Chairman Winslow, Commissioners. My name is Gil Luz, Project Manager for the Vienna to Nelson Line Rebuild Project. On this picture here, this is just an overview of the entire line itself, running from Vienna substation on the left-hand side to Nelson over on the right-hand side. Approximately 60% of the line lies in Maryland, with the other 40%, just over 6 miles, in Delaware. There are about 100 structures. It's a fairly significant rebuild project. But if we go to the next slide, it kind of lays out our execution timeline through the remainder of the project at a fairly high level. So a couple of these milestones have already passed. We did finish our transmission design in December of last year, and we also received our CPCN permit for Maryland in December as well. We have begun some vegetation clearing I think this was discussed previously, but we are increasing the voltage class of this line, although it will be energized to 138 as it is today. We're rebuilding it to 230 standards, which does require a little bit of additional clearing along the right-of-way to ensure we have proper clearance. So that is underway. We are also continuing on with some design work at Vienna substation, which I know that is in Maryland, but it is required as part of this project as well. I know it was 2 slides ago, but that was the second bullet from the bottom for some disconnect and other equipment upgrades at the substation. We expect that to be done Q2 of this year. We expect all of our state and federal permits to be in hand in Q3 of this year, and then to begin construction preparations also in the later stages of Q3 this year as well. We expect to begin receiving some of those longer lead major materials, maybe like the 100 steel structures that we have to get, the conductor wire, some of the other major equipment, starting in Q3. And we also are going to begin fall construction this fall. It is 14 miles of rebuild, so we expect it to take 2 construction seasons potentially. So we have also spring construction starting in Q1 of next year, and then with an in-service date of May 31st, 2025. So that's the primary overview, so I'll stop there unless there's any questions. Yeah, and we can. So this wraps up the portion on the Vienna Nelson. So if there are questions specific to this project that we can answer now, we can take them now, and then we can transition to the transmission portion.
Commissioner Gray here. Mr. Chairman, I just want, since you're not in the room, and Commissioner Drexler, to recognize that Demi is also back in the room and I think was on this team, and I was expecting them to say it was because of his contribution that this project moved forward quickly.
Demi is a big part of why
I thought I
we've been
saw
able
him
to
on the
move
live
forward.
feed. Yeah.
Gil, one question if I may. Are there any Delaware or state or county permits required, or is it just on the Maryland side?
There's some, they're mostly on the Maryland side. All the significant permitting stuff is on Maryland. There was nothing major that we're worried about for the Delaware side.
Thanks.
Are you worried about anything for the Maryland side?
since we got the CPCM permit, we are not so worried anymore. Honestly, permitting has gone really smoothly. The most significant permitting besides CPCN was some wetlands permitting. There's some non-tidal and tidal wetlands in Maryland along the Nanticoke River. And there's, for anyone that might know, there's I guess I'll say an abandoned section of Old Route 50 where 10 of our structures go across, and it's really not great, like marshland and whatever, but we've been making good strides in there. I just want to reiterate, we don't have any foreseeable concerns. We've been making a lot of progress, and although we don't have the permits in hand yet, we expect to have them June, July.
Excuse me, on the Delaware side, who is giving you the permits?
I might need to reach back out to, I have a guy in our environmental department that handles most of the permitting efforts. I can get you a list of all the permits if you'd like.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
One final question. So you've talked to us about the accelerated timeframe. Would you say that the estimated cost of the project to implement the project is reasonably within the same range, or has that accelerated timeframe impacted the cost?
So whenever you accelerate a project, there is some sort of associated cost with doing that acceleration. Now, it's not been super significant in terms of that. Most of the cost increases that we've seen are really due to materials going up. Steel structures alone for this is like a $9 million order, which was a little bit more than we had estimated originally. However, the original price that we put on this project was around $45 million, and here today we're looking at closer to, for the transmission line itself, to 52. But when you include the Vienna substation work, it's like 55 total for the entire piece there, which is within 25%, so it's pretty well within what we expected it to be.
You said that you're building, well, the project called for a 138 kV line, but you're building a
230.
230. Why are you building a higher kV line than you need?
So
PJM needs.
Yeah, so it's for multiple reasons, right? So today it's 138,000 volts, 138 kV. Under some emergency conditions, if we were to retire Indian River today without doing any upgrades, the line was going to be overloaded to like 175%. So we're rebuilding it to 230 twofold. One, because although rebuilding it with a thicker conductor that can handle more power at 138 voltage would be adequate for the job, we're trying to take it as like a strategic initiative as far as, future wind and renewable energy that we see keep getting injected to the system. And the cost to go from 138 to 230 is less than 10% of the overall project. So, and it doesn't impact the timeline. So basically seeing it as a way to stave off a rebuild sooner that might be required due to all these other wind and solar projects we see keep coming into the system.
Have you factored in Delaware's proposed offshore wind, where it would come on and where it would connect with the lines down there?
We can. I think we're going to cover that a little bit more in the next presentation. If that, getting ahead of me, Ruth, it's okay. So I think we can cover that a little bit more. But I think to reiterate what Gil said, just around not wanting to come back and do this project all over again, essentially, and that within 10 years.
That's what I would like to avoid very much. To do this once and once only.
That was the strategy here. Any other questions, or we'll use that as a segue to the transmission piece? All right, cool, it's all yours.
My notes here. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioner, Commission staff, and everyone else in attendance. My name is Pullen Shaw. I'm Director of Transmission Strategy and Interconnection Contracts for Exelon, and I'm here today to hopefully answer some of the questions that we've heard around offshore wind and transmission, particularly around the Indian River substation. So if we could move to the first slide here, what we were trying to do is just give you a holistic picture of the offshore wind and kind of how it is in the Mid-Atlantic and a lot of the states along the eastern shore. Some of the specific offshore wind goals that the different states have put out there in and around Delmarva and how it will ultimately impact Delaware. To Ruth's question, we can talk a little bit about as well too. But as you can see, the awards that have been given to the different states and the goals that the different states have put out there. So I was trying to kind of give you just the picture of the offshore wind industry around Delaware, and then what we see in service or anticipated in up to 2024 is about 986 megawatts. So I think one of the messages here is that it's taking a lot longer for some of the offshore wind developers to come online. The other part of it is that the costs have gone significantly up, and we've seen a lot of the developers along, particularly in the Northeast, start to withdraw their projects, and we saw that in New Jersey as well too. So there's a reassessment of the costs that were originally awarded in New Jersey, New York, and some of the other states, but the costs, as was talked about, some of the materials have gone up for those developers as well. So we're starting to see some of them withdraw their awards that were originally granted. The next slide just shows kind of what's coming up here, particularly in New Jersey and Maryland, because I think that will affect, and back to Ruth Ann's question, some of the work that may come down into Delaware. As you may know, PJM conducted the state agreement approach for New Jersey, we call it 1.0, and they are looking to put another solicitation out there starting in June for an additional 3,500 megawatts. And Maryland has legislation in there to get up to 8,500 megawatts. And there you can see just some of the differences in the different policies in the states, but Maryland doesn't have a requirement to physically interconnect into Maryland, so they can take the 8,500 megawatts from any location, while New Jersey solicitation requires the interconnection to be in New Jersey. And all of these, under the state agreement approach, the recommendation is always to kind of talk to the other states, and so that we can optimize all of these requirements, and to Ruth Ann's point, only build once and not have to keep building for all the different solicitations. But I was trying to show this to you guys as Delaware decides and comes up with what, if any, offshore wind goals they have, it's how it interplays with Maryland and New Jersey. And feel free to ask any questions on any of these topics. But one of the questions was kind of how do we engage in these solicitations, and there's kind of three different areas that Exelon and depending on the region, the specific utility, so in Delaware, where we would engage as it relates to wind. In terms of PJM, we do a lot with the PJM Transmission Planning Organization in providing all the technical data, the modeling, any requested information they have on offshore wind as they are looking at different scenarios and potentially putting out solicitations. We're providing all the technical data and model topology and all of that. and we participate in the planning process and advocate for the most cost-effective solution, as it has multiple benefits, and if there are ability to meet multiple drivers, try to put those in, and that includes some of our local transmission requirements. And then we work with PJM on the interconnection study. So the developer would put their interconnection request through PJM. We would perform the analysis, see what other impact it has. And when it is done through that process, and I have a slide in the appendix if anyone's interested, we can talk about cost allocation, but that would be the cost that goes back to the developer for any network upgrades in and around their interconnection request. We work with the developer on potentially unbundling. In a lot of these solicitations, there's a complete OREC payment that's given to the developer to pay for the generation and the transmission. We've been advocating that, bifurcating that and getting a clear view of what the transmission requirements is the better way to go, as opposed to just a lump payment to the developer. And then maybe you can see what other benefits that transmission requirement may have. So we've been providing education on with the developers on the PJM interconnection process and the transmission planning process. And then we engage with the developer through the whole study process. And then with our various states, we've been, again, talking about the unbundling of transmission from the offshore wind generation, trying to understand what the strategic vision is around the different states' public policy goals. And then, we keep advocating for having the multi-state collaboration. So as all of these states are looking at their different public policy goals, if there's ways to optimize transmission build-out for all of them. And then, obviously, we participate in any of the state-sponsored state agreement approach. So if Delaware elects to go through that process, then we would be participating in that process as well. Any questions on that?
You had any, you all plan, not you all, but Skipjack, we plan, Delaware, we plan probably to come through Indian River or near it in terms of our offshore wind. Have you had any conversations with DNREC regarding this?
I have not personally, and I think some of our folks, as they're looking at in their study and they're working with PJM, I was on one call with DNREC where they were talking about, they put together that study. I think it's 1,000 megawatts is the initial study to look at. And as they go through that process, we'll participate and help wherever we can. But nothing specific.
If 1,000, based on what you see, is 1,000 too little, too much, just right? What?
It's a great question, and it kind of goes to the last page as well, because I think Commissioner Gray was asking a little bit about the capacity at Indian River, but it's dependent on a lot of things. So there's a number of interconnection requests that are coming in through that area, and specifically at Indian River. When you start to model all of those together, you're going to start to see some significant problems, and we don't know at what point it tips to where we're going to have to do some massive build out. But as these interconnection requests come through, we study them, and those costs, again, as long as it's going through that interconnection queue process, goes to the developer and not to the customers of Delmarva. It's if Delaware goes into a state agreement approach, they would be picking up all of those costs. So
Now I have another question. Recently, PJM announced that it had $53 billion in transmission costs related to Virginia and the data centers. Do you know how much of that will be picked up by Delaware residents?
I can get you that number. I think the cost allocation. So the initial award here was $5 billion in the latest RTEP window, and it's cost allocated This is one of the, and it's a perfect segue into this slide because as you can see, there are three types of projects that are drivers in PJM, right? And those that fall under the baseline category get cost allocated, and like I said, in the appendix, I have the breakdown, but it's 50% of the load ratio share. So Delmarva customers will pick up how much load they have on a percentage, as well as the distribution factor or the effect basically it has or the benefits it may have on the system, which may not be as great considering that it's Loudoun County in Virginia where a lot of these issues are. But we do have that number somewhere, so I can get that to you at some point in time. Yeah.
Thank you.
But to Ruth Ann's question, the reason I brought this slide up is as those baseline projects happen, and one of the challenges that we put back to PJM is to make sure that if it's truly a supplemental project, then it should not be moved to a baseline. And we're going through a process right now. Ohio, there's a lot of data center load that is happening across all of our states. And what's happening is transmission build out for that is fairly significant. And the costs are going to a lot of our states that may not have that data center load. So we're trying to push back and ensure that those dollars are going back to, and why we would push for, in AEP in Ohio, that their load should be, their data center load should be picked up by Ohio and not by our Delaware residents. But in the case of the Dominion load, PJM said that it was in combination of that data center load, in addition to a lot of the retirements, Brandon Shores and Wagner in Maryland, along with just new generation interconnecting, putting all of that together was the reason why they opened up a baseline solicitation, and that's why we are hit with the dollars associated with that. So.
I would very much appreciate seeing that.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. The next slide, next couple slides. One of the questions I think someone had were, what is the types of congestion or constraints that we're seeing, or as PJM has been seeing on the system? And just wanted to pictorially kind of show some of the ones that pop up a lot in PJM's analysis and where they're located. And PJM's RTEP process continues to evaluate these constraints and identify transmission projects that may address them. These would be the baseline projects, and again, would be not only cost allocated to Delaware, but could also be cost allocated out to other states as well too. But in general, at the lower voltage here at 230 and 130 and 69 for the next slide shows, those would reside primarily in Delaware and paid for by Delaware customers. But the point here also is, I think some of the questions is that the congestion in that PJM sees on these constraints usually can be alleviated with generation to come on, but you still have congestion pricing. What PJM does run is a market efficiency solicitation process, and with that, folks can submit their transmission enhancements. And if they meet a hurdle of a benefit to cost, PJM could move ahead and put those projects in place to help eliminate or reduce the congestion on the peninsula. So these are the ones that we're just seeing kind of that have been popping up in PJM's analysis, and we'll have to see if they move forward on looking for projects to alleviate those.
Question?
Yep.
Commissioner Gray here. So as I look at these transmission constraints, when I think about Indian River and the line that's developing to Vienna, does that line, when it's complete, help alleviate any of these constraints?
Maybe some of them, but not. A lot of this is in the lower voltage, and you're going to be. You may push back on some of the flows coming down. I think a lot of this is just the flows that are coming in from Jersey, Pennsylvania, down into the peninsula, down to serve a lot of the Baltimore and the DC load. Over time, as a lot of the traditional generation has been retiring, there's not a lot pushing back. So it's where the location of a lot of these offshore wind units, in some cases, could aggravate some of these even more. So that's what we'll be looking at. But when we study that, if any of these are violations that are caused by that Indian River, we go back to the generation developer, and they're on the hook to make sure that the network upgrades are there to fix the problem. Yep.
But who is the developer for these projects?
These are just where the location of the constraints that PJM. So there's no specific projects to meet those at this time. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. And then slide 12, my last slide, formal slide, so I can open up to questions. But I think Commissioner Gray, you had some questions around the Indian River substation, and on the site, the actual site, prior to all of the retirements, there was a little bit over 800 megawatts of generation that was put out from that station. The current capacity of the station, I think that was one of your questions, is really dependent on all of the topology changes that have happened in and around that station. So we know 800 megawatts can probably get out of that, but there is a lot of new generation that is requested interconnection at that point. So as we study that, and with the other retirements that may be in and around Delaware, the current capacity is really dependent on all of those, depending on what point in time that new generation comes in. So, but the question I think you had was kind of, is it reserved? The way that it works in a networked facility like this one, there's no reservation to, like, if we had significant load growth in and around Delaware and in that area, that would be the primary use of the megawatts that are coming in from the Indian River substation. So it's not like it's reserved for the Maryland offshore wind. It's just a matter of megawatts. What we would do is we would reinforce probably the 69-138 to help meet that additional load that may come down into the peninsula. And then just, another point in, as the Indian River facility was sold off and was purchased, I think U.S. Wind was the purchased the location. We actually reserved and bought 15 additional acres so that we're not left with trying to acquire additional land or anything like that, preemptively in anticipation for, back to your question, then of additional transmission that may be needed to support offshore wind and other retirements in the area. So we have that ready to go as we expand the 230 kV yard and make it into a breaker and a half configurations.
Thank you. So I did note that U.S. Wind, and I think you said Delmarva may have acquired some of the land. What about the transmission rights? Who's the owner of those, and for how long will those be owned by the current owner?
So the way the PJM process works, and I'm not a complete expert in this area, but the injection rights are owned by the generating station, and as they retire, they have 1 year to do something with them. And I believe they are able to sell them to. So when I believe it was NRG that owned the substation, the capacity injection rights. So the CIRs are then transferred or could be sold, and I believe Indian River would then own them. Or I'm sorry, U.S. Wind would be the owner of those.
One last question, please. Thanks. Are there any examples right now of, say, structured and a restructured state working together for unbundled offshore wind generation?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good presentation.
Any more questions?
All right, if that's it, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, Jake, thank you. That was super helpful. Appreciate the company willingness to do that. Chairman Winslow, our next meeting will be on March 27th. That's the only comments I have for you today.
Okay, thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned.